far, far away. I actually was an artist myself. I still like to think of myself as an artist. I received my MFA in acting from the Florida State University Oslo Conservatory for Actors Training, and I went out to Los Angeles and actually worked on soap for a short time. And with Robin Wright back in the day. She was much younger than I was, and waited a lot of tables. And after about a year and a half out there, decided I wanted to open a small line professional theater. So I got an investor, and I went ahead and did that, and built a theater called the Tamarind Theater right under the Hollywood sign, which today is owned by the Upright Citizens Brigade, Amy Poehler's troupe. And that sort of launched a different career for me that really revolved around the business of art and producing live theater that led to producing live, large film festivals actually, and now becoming Vice Provost of the Arts and working at the University of Virginia. So I have a phenomenal for people who move back and forth or decide to maintain their love and passion for the arts by forging a career in the business of art as well, which leads us to today's panel and our special guests. I'm not using the ladies first. I'm just going to go right here with Mr. Wright Harvey, who is the president and co-founder of Sugarlift. Moving down the line, we have Reece Mealy, who's the exhibitor relations manager at the Armory show here. Courtney Schaefer, manager of affiliate programs at the Museum of Modern Art. And Christy Williams, assistant vice president, museum and corporate art services at Sotheby's.
Hold your applause.
So I'd like to thank all of you for joining us, and I wanted to open up, rather than read everybody's bios here, and this is just going to be kind of fast and furious and loose and a lot of fun. I want to start out by having each of our panelists talk just a little bit about themselves. Don't give everything away all at once here, because we've got a lot of questions for you. What you're doing now and what led them to their current job in the arts. Christina, I'd like to start with you, if I may.
Sure. So I go by Christy, actually.
Oh, sorry.
So sorry about that. But I would say my love of Virginia and UVA started with my father, but my love for the arts started with my mother. And Mommy and Me classes at the Met here in New York. And I took my first art history class at Virginia with Professor Dobbins. Hopefully some of you had the opportunity to take his class. And it's sort of history from there. I studied abroad in London and in Florence, and was able to be lucky enough to be offered an internship at Sotheby's in London in between my third and fourth year. I'm still at Sotheby's now. That was 12 or 13 years ago. And I'll start just to explain why I'm still there. And the highlight of my career is probably still that summer that I was interning. We were selling the 36th Vermeer. I thought at the time we must just find the 36th Vermeer every sale season, and it sold for $30 million, and it was incredibly exciting. And I just had the privilege to actually physically take the painting from Sotheby's to the National Gallery, and I was told not to go in the up the stairs, but go in this little black door, and somebody would pull the gate away and take me up in the freight elevator up to the restoration studio, and there were 3 easels set up. They'd taken the 2 Vermeers down off the walls of the National Gallery, and then there was space for the third one, and the foremost experts in 17th century Dutch art were all there to inspect the paintings side by side. Unfortunately, I blacked out at that moment and don't remember anything they said because it was so overwhelming and exciting. But there are moments like that still happen in my current role today. I work in, as Jody said, the Museum and Corporate Art Services Department, so I help institutions and corporations when they're buying and selling art. We do a lot of appraisals, cultivation events, general collection management. We help source and place loans, provide benefit auctioneers. Essentially, museums and corporations themselves are clients, but they're also a conduit and a gateway to other private clients. And so there are a lot of ways in which we can work with our internal teams and also with directors and all the way down to sort of registrars and art handlers to help these institutions.
Thank you, Christy. Courtney?
So like Christy, I also kind of found my love for art when I was younger. I was taking I guess like 4th, 5th, and 6th grade kind of afternoon art, and it was everything from ripping out magazines and figuring out, how to weave fabrics together, or painting or drawing. When I went to high school, though, I kind of explored sports and student council and other avenues, but I always, just in the back of my head, had this, I guess, appetite for something creative. And I remember right before my senior year, I was looking at the course offerings for the next year, and AP Art History was offered, and I had taken a couple of APs, some histories, definitely no math or sciences, and it was actually my mom who said, Courtney, this wasn't even offered to me, or I only stumbled upon it in college, you've got to take this class. And it really changed the way that I thought about, being a student, and that I could potentially study something, and I was good at note cards, and I was good at, memorization, and there was just this connection between a word and an image. So went on to Charlottesville. One of my first classes at UVA was actually with Reece, Larry Getty, Dutch Art of the Golden Age. I just was absolutely in love with it. I mean, every class was like, he had this thesis, and every class was a paper. Every class was this incredible art history lesson, and I felt like I was at the Met. And from there, I pursued a double major in art history and French, and kind of, explored other avenues at UVA, the museum where I was a docent. Reece and I co-founded and taught a class, which we'll probably talk about at some point, which was great. But I always, I was studying it, but I always wanted to do more, wanted to figure out how I could segue and really make that into my career. Right after Charlottesville, I came up here and was in Juliana's position as the executive director for the club for 2 years. And it's funny because when I was doing my job search, in that role at the club, you're working with people and you're doing membership and events and cultural programming. But I didn't even really look for that in my next, I didn't know that existed in my next job. So I feel extremely lucky. I work in donor relations, essentially at MoMA, with 3 of our patron groups where we provide select programming for them all around the city, from walkthroughs with the curators to major benefits and fundraisers, to going into an artist studio and hearing them talk about their creative process or their inspiration, travel, and art fairs, and all the above. So I feel extremely lucky that I found, somehow along this path, everything is kind of added up, and I've been able to use what I've learned and be extremely challenged and grow at the same time.
All right, thank you, Courtney. Reece?
So I can trace my, founding interest in art history and just sort of wanting to make that part of my life to like the very specific moment at the Musée d'Orsay, which some of you may have gone to in Paris. And I'd been at museums all day with my dad, who was trying to impart on me his love of art, and I remember being so bored. And this one painting, it was the Floor Planers by Caillebotte, an Impressionist painting, and it was this huge piece, and I remember he was at this point getting very tired, and I just stopped, and it just, I think I started crying. It was this very visceral, strange reaction, and I could never quite place my finger on what it was, but it was like an experience, and I felt like I had to follow that kind of intuition of mine that art was something that was for me. Tried my hand at studio in college, and it was a disaster. So I was like, okay, where can I go from here, and how can I pursue this? And as Courtney mentioned, we started a class at UVA called the Art+Business, and it was after we had a very formational summer in London at the Sotheby Institute. And so starting that class and studying in London really exposed both of us, I think, to the broader art business world, and more than just the art history lessons, as riveting as they were. I also love Professor Getty. And so from that I was like, okay, Sotheby's or bust. And sure enough, I started after a stint at a Wyoming dude ranch, which was amazing. And I worked, not with Christy, but I remember looking up to her a lot. And there were a couple. Wright's wife, Calvin, is also at Sotheby's. I'm thinking, I found my place, this is me. and was pretty crestfallen to discover about 2 years in that it was like not what I had hoped for. And I kind of had bounced around in their floater program, everything from their preferred marketing to their like Uber VIP clients to the shipping and logistics department. And it wasn't speaking to me, and so I quit one day. My parents were not happy. I didn't have a job. It was like a midlife or quarter-life crisis. I was sobbing in Central Park. And lo and behold, I met with my first boss at Sotheby's, and she happened to have a role for me at the Armory show. And I had never heard of art fairs, really. I had no idea what I was doing, and I jumped into it about 2.5 years ago now. And I've since become the exhibitor relations manager for New York's largest art fair that happens every March for a week over on Piers 92 and 94. We host 200 galleries from 36 different countries around the world, and it's basically a trade show for them. 65,000 collectors, museum personnel, junior associates, Courtney's groups come through, and it's like, I love my job, I love my career, so I'm happy to talk to you about it today.
It is the fair to go to.
It's that fair. It is.
And I saw that Carabot painting for the first time recently. The National Gallery had a show in Carabot. So my name's Wright Harvey. I found my way here. I think the conversation started at a recent committee meeting. They said, we need a guy on the panel.
We're running out of ideas.
I'm sitting there and going, I can't think of anybody. So that's how I made my way here. I grew up in Florida. I went to UVA, graduated in 2005. I went into UVA loving the arts. I was that kid in middle school that everyone would copy off of in art class. I was just always good at drawing. I could draw Bill Clinton in 3.5 seconds. That skill make it come in handy again, I don't know. Got to UVA, studied studio art and econ, and then actually made my way to New York via my, now my wife, Calvine. She and I met at UVA. She's from up here. We came to visit one weekend when the Jean-Claude Cousteau gates were in Central Park. I'd only taken one art history class at UVA. That might be my only regret. And went to MoMA, saw the Rauschenbergs, and saw these paintings that I had only read about and seen in textbooks. Realized I needed to move to New York. Got a job at JP Morgan. Thank goodness for on-grounds interviews. And spent about 9 years at JP Morgan in institutional sales and corporate strategy. And about 2 years ago, decided to become an entrepreneur. And I started a company called Sugarlift. Sugarlift is solving the problem of why it's still difficult for young professionals such as yourselves to find high quality and real artwork to hang in your apartments and your homes. It seems like we can buy anything these days, and that art is still the thing that's kind of hard to buy. So Sugarlift is your go-to source to do that. That's my own plug.
That's fair, you're on the panel, plug away.
But I'm very glad to be here with my esteemed panelists.
Thank you, Wright. I think that we're going to revisit that shift from JP Morgan into Sugarlift a little bit further down the road. I want to shift for a moment and just change it up a little bit and ask all of you, what are you most excited about in the arts, either upcoming or current, and why? And anybody can start, but everybody's going to answer this one.
So for me, I'll jump in since mine is quite immediate. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm heading off to Brussels to go to their big art fairs. They have two now, Art Brussels and also a fair called The Independent, which if you went to the Armory show in March, you might have also gone to The Independent, which is kind of a younger, kind of trendy fair down in Tribeca. And so I'm very excited about this because while a big part of my role as exhibitor relations manager for the Armory show is, in addition to producing the event, I work on cultivating, maintaining, building relationships with galleries from all over the world. And so until now, I've only traveled domestically. to fairs, kind of schmoozing, meeting them, seeing the art on display. And so this trip marks the first of many this year, which are international, so I'm quite excited.
I'll jump in. I'm also excited about travel. I am taking a group of donors from MoMA to San Francisco next month. You may have been hearing about the reopening of SF MoMA, which has been under construction for quite some time. So it's kind of one of those big art world happenings, similar to the Whitney reopening downtown last year. So we are visiting private collections, we're obviously going to the museum, we're going to this really cool photography hub that's all taken from private collections, kind of a rotating show, eating our way through San Francisco as well, and yeah, I'm gonna get to babysit a group of 20 and accompanied by a curator, but it's really gonna be, you know, this incredible, seeing all of these behind the scenes, you know, before it's open to the public, really bespoke experiences. So it's eating up a lot of my time as I'm the travel agent and coordinator, and all of those roles combined, but I'm really excited.
Well, I want to come with you, and I feel like that sort of is in line with my job. I have a two-pronged approach. I think globally I'm really excited about what's happening in the digital space online. There's been a lot of growth at Sotheby's focusing on our partnership with eBay, launching new apps, redoing the website. I think there are going to be a lot of really exciting changes and focuses that sort of redefines how we're thinking about our traditional auction sale and also about traditional private sales, and sort of breaking those boundaries of a company that's been around since 1744 and thinking about how to grow and change in this new world and the global reach that we have as a company, but the ways in which we need to adapt to what's happening around us. You know, I think similar to what Wright was saying, and that wonderful niche that his company's been able to fill. I think we're thinking on a sort of larger scale, well, how do we reach younger buyers, different markets? How do you make big brown wood furniture attractive? I mean, there are a lot of different things that we're thinking about. And more locally, I'm really excited about the changes that are happening at the Brooklyn Museum with Ann Pasternak, the new director who's come on from Creative Time, which is a nonprofit arts organization here in the city. She's breathing new light and energy into a very well-established museum, and I think following on the shoulders of what Arnold Lehman was able to do, making the museum not a little metropolitan, but a museum really about Brooklyn and what's relevant. This is now exciting to me because I made the jump across the river to Brooklyn 2 weeks ago. My mother thinks I've moved out of New York, but I think that I was relaying earlier, there's a curator who is considering retirement and is so excited about the new energy and life, again, as I said, that Anne is breathing into that institution, that he is in it and excited, and I just think they've done a lot already in a very short period of time, and I highly recommend the very easy subway ride out there, not just to visit me, but to visit that museum. I think it gets left off, but there are really some incredible things there, and just watch, because I really think they're going to take New York by storm, and I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
So I have to say, I'm most excited about, I just had a daughter 4 days ago.
I told you were not allowed to say that as your exciting news.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about little Josephine. She's 4 or 5 days old now. I can't really remember. The sun's gone up and gone down. I lost track of time. But I'm really excited that I'm going to get to draw with little Josephine. Hopefully she likes drawing with her dad. As Reece mentioned, my wife is a Sotheby's too, so we're both in the arts. I'm sure little Jo will want nothing to do with the arts at all, but I really hope she will. What I am really excited about, kind of on the macro view, is more kind of culturally. If you think, when I think about when I first moved to New York, I had to like search out a bar to find cool beers that were out. You could tell a good restaurant when you saw that it wasn't just Heineken, Amstel Light, Bud Light on tap. If they had Dogfish Head or Stone, if you knew they put that much thought into the beers they were serving, they were probably putting that much thought into the food too, and it's very correlated. And if you look at what's happened, not just in beer, but wine, I mean, we went to UVA, right? We got to cover all the food groups. If you think about what happened in music, we can go to great concerts, and then we have Spotify. If we want good food, you don't have to go to a fancy French restaurant. You can go to the Momofuku and get like a pork belly steamroll. Or you can, order Blue Apron and cook a really nice meal at home. I'm not that fashionable. Many of you are more fashionable than I am, but we have ways to become very fashionable very quickly. And culturally, that's happened. When I look at my suits that I first bought, to work at JP Morgan, they were like baggy and accordion, pleats and all this stuff. That was 11 years ago. So much has shifted culturally across so many different areas. It hasn't quite happened yet in art. We have so many great outlets. The fairs are incredible. The Armory is the fair. Freeze is great. There's so many great fairs to go to. You go to MoMA and see the Degas show. If you say Degas, you don't really know what you're talking about, I guess. You're talking about Degas and MoMA. You go to Sotheby's and you see like the Geneleschi. We as the public have access to so much great art. But if you go to your buddy's apartment and he's got his Led Zeppelin poster still hung up, or an aperitif liqueur from Italy that he's never had, or what's the Scandinavian IKEA? We get art from IKEA. There's this huge disconnect between what we all do really enjoy and go see and what we can consume at home. So I think there's going to be movement on that front. It's why we started Sugarlift to help in that transition, make good art more accessible. So I'm hoping that we'll continue to just lead richer lives in art and across so many things that we enjoy.
Great, thank you. Could all of you just tell us a little bit more, drill down just a little bit deeper about your organization, what it looks like, and how does your role fit in the bigger picture of running that organization, some of the goals of the organization as well, too. Christy?
Sure. Well, there have been so many changes at Sotheby's recently. So if anybody's been following, they've probably seen. We really have we have a new CEO and a lot of new senior management. We brought on our agency partners, and all these transitions have been really exciting. There are a lot of really smart, very talented people that have come on board, and other colleagues were offered incentive packages to leave if they wanted to leave versus going through layoffs. So we're in this really unique position where everyone that's currently at Sotheby's really wants to be at Sotheby's. And I think that the media has been playing a lot of sort of negative sides to this transitional shift. But what I've experienced with my team and with a lot of these new colleagues is a really exciting new energy and a lot of opportunity to change and to grow while still maintaining this level of expertise and the brand recognition of a company like Sotheby's, and sort of finding that balance between the two. As far as what I do specifically and how it relates to the overall goals of the company, I work in a business development department, so I'm a business getter. I am very focused on relationships and getting people to transact with us, to buy and sell. We do a lot of other events and various different processes to get to that point, and particularly with institutions, it's not a meet you today, you're selling tomorrow. It's a very sort of long, thoughtful, very diligent process that you go through. Again, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that's really unique about my role and about institutions is that they're conduits to other clients. So many of our private clients sit on the boards or involved with these institutions that we work with. So that's a major focus of ours, and oftentimes we'll get involved with sponsoring various different exhibitions or events, not only because of the institution, but also because of the people that are associated with it. SF MoMA being a great example, MoMA being a great example. A lot of the people and private people that are involved with those institutions are our top clients. So it's really exciting to sort of see that hybrid and be able to work with private clients, corporate clients, dealers, art advisors. I get to go to art fairs. I get to hang out in Bushwick at Wright's incredible gallery. There's always an opportunity to meet someone and to make a connection. And I think we're thinking very strategically about how do we take this to the next level. And I don't silo myself in only working with corporations and only working with museums, because as you'll hear throughout this evening, it's a very large international global art market, and we all need each other. And we've all here on this panel had an opportunity to work together professionally, which has been fantastic. I actually own a Wright Harvey original watercolor in my house.
One of my favorite collectors.
So I think as far as, we're thinking very carefully about every day how to create these transactional opportunities, how to deepen these relationships, and that's really what Sotheby's is about. It's about relationships, and it's about helping a buyer and a seller come together. We're sort of mixing. We act as liaison to help someone find something that they're looking for, either privately or at auction, and being able to build a museum collection to be part of something like that, either through groups like the Guggenheim Young Collectors Council, or through my job, is just fantastic. I mean, those objects, like the Gentileschi, which Wright was mentioning earlier, this incredible painting that we sold to the Getty, and now that's on public view and everyone can enjoy that. And that's something that really fulfills me and is a focus that our company certainly has, and we will continue to support institutions across the world.
Courtney.
Now I'm trying to remember all of the things that Reece and I spoke about and discussed for our class. We went down to Charlottesville, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, to talk to UVA students about our jobs and what's exciting. And of course, there's so many great things going on. I'm sure many of you have been to MoMA, which was founded in 1929 by 3 women, 3 really avant-garde women of their time. And I don't know how many of you were there before 2004. Yeah, got another UVA alum, Margaret Doyle, Director of Communications, in the audience. But the reason I say 2004 is because we're actually going another expansion right now. You may have seen some scaffolding, if you've been to the museum. You may have noticed there's no restrooms on the first floor right now. But we're really excited, kind of in the still quiet phase 1 construction of the new building. We're expanding to the west side. It's going to be a redesign of our lobby, our retail store, and most importantly, more gallery space, because it's a good problem to have when you have a crowd like we do on a Friday night when it's Uniqlo Free Fridays and free to the public, or a Saturday day when everyone from New York and tourists around the world are in town, or just any day that's raining. But we need more gallery space. We really want to improve that visitor experience as we continue to reach out to not only our local community, but our international community. I was volunteering for my coworkers who I work very closely with on our special events team. We had a big fundraiser, our DR, David Rockefeller Award Luncheon, 2 weeks ago, and I was dressed up nice, but just kind of standing by the security guard right out front, and people come up to you, and just because you're wearing a badge, they think that they can ask, they think that all the ins and outs of a museum, and I don't all the time, but so many different languages, so many tell me about this exhibition, or where can I find this at the store, where's the restroom, so you have to pinch yourself. My office is located right in the museum. But it's an incredible place with so many people in and out every day. As Ray was talking about, we just opened up a big Degas drawing show, which will be our big kind of spring blockbuster. I'm sure, hopefully, many of you saw Picasso's sculpture or Matisse cutouts last year, which was just really successful and exciting for us. But it's an amazing organization to be at. Really, our focus is to be the best home for modern and contemporary art, and it'll be exciting with our expansion to see where that takes us with our visitorship and membership, hopefully reaching new goals. And as we expand, curatorial, you're seeing exhibitions that are organized by curators from multiple departments, or talks of really getting more into media and performance art. So there's this huge avenue, I think, really to explore. In terms of where I come into that, I briefly, talked about it, but I oversee 3 of our donor groups, and these are crucial to the institution. Not only are they members, but they kind of are family members in a way. They provide programming for them at the museum and around the city, and you're cultivating these relationships. I mean, I think we all 4 of us really work in relationship building and in development and engagement. But I have people who give me books, so I feel like I'm in a book club with them, to relationship advice, to they tell me everything that's going on, and now I get to travel with them. But it's an exciting time to be at MoMA. The Contemporary Arts Council, one of the groups that I work with, our senior collectors, just celebrated their 65th anniversary. So we're celebrating that, and then the junior associates, which Wright is both part of, and Juliana, and maybe some other people in the room, are having their 25th anniversary. So, with all of these anniversaries and new people coming in and out, I don't know, it's just exciting to kind of preserve that legacy and to see where it'll take us.
How about you, Reece?
So Sotheby's and MoMA are obviously very well-known companies and institutions. How many of you guys know what an art fair is or have been to one? Okay, that's so as I mentioned, I had kind of a naive perception of what the art business world was when I entered the workforce about 5 years ago, and it was kind of Sotheby's or bust, as I said. I found my way through happenstance to the Armory show, and what we are, as I mentioned, is New York's oldest art fair, and Frieze, which I highly recommend you all visit. I shouldn't be saying that because they're our biggest competition, but that happens in Randall's Island in May. It's also incredible. You should definitely check it out. And those of you who have been to an art fair know that Frieze, the Armory show, Fiat, Art Basel, there's so many. They're essentially giant, amazing, beautiful trade shows for the world's best, usually young art. So that's where, I'm also a business getter like Christy, but where we really differ is, my clients are galleries, whereas hers are institutions. And the art that my company and her company are dealing with are generally different. The main difference usually being is that at an art fair in the contemporary section, it's all primary market. So it's new work, usually, are a couple years old at the max. And so collectors flock to art fairs all over the world because they know that they're going to be seeing the best new work by either the best established artists. You might see, I think we had like an amazing Kusama at David Warner's booth this year, selling for like over $1 million. And then you might have a painting, by some unknown Brooklyn artist, maybe one of Wright's artists, coming up the line, going for like 5,000. So it's an incredible place to see this amazing diversity of art. And then we also have a modern section, which sells more secondary market work, Warhols, Picassos. And so I love it for that vibrancy of the work to which you're exposed. But that said, there are over 200 art fairs in the world today, and galleries and collectors have an overwhelming assortment to choose from. It's very expensive for these galleries to participate in an art fair. And so what our challenge is at the Armory show is making this business model an economical choice for these galleries. And my role is to kind of convince them that these sometimes over $100,000 they're spending just to participate for this 1 week is worth it. And so we have a whole team dedicated to, we have a VIP relations director who works very closely with museums, bringing in the top collectors from all over the world, museums, trustees, etc. And just making sure, and my job is making sure that we bring in the best galleries so that those top collectors and museums are happy. So we have a brand new executive director. Like Sotheby's, we're also going through a big change. Obviously not quite of the same scale, but it feels that way given my workload right now. We got a new director who started about 5 weeks before this past Armory show in March. So for me, it's been an incredibly interesting 7 months. Our former executive director, Noah Horowitz, if any of y'all were at the art panel 2 years ago, he spoke. He also is a Wahoo. So that was very cool working with him. He's now at Art Basel Miami Beach, heading up their fair. So it's an incredible move for him. But our new director comes from the art journalism world and knows very little of the inner workings of a fair. So it's been a really incredible opportunity for me to learn and grow in my role. And I have to give a shout out to Jesse Capello over there, who was my incredible assistant for the few months before and during the fair. If you have questions about the nitty gritty of the art fair world, because it's definitely a mix of like glamour and incredibly hard work, as I know all of us are no stranger to. She can give you the scoop.
It's great to hear such passion from all of our panelists. Obviously, they love what they're doing. Right, I'm going to reframe this a little bit for you. Big change for you. Just had a baby. You left a career in the financial world to begin pursuing your passion, the work you have as an artist, and also to form a company that supports artists and sells their work. Why? Tell me about it. What was that like for you? Scary?
Yeah, so I'll try to be brief. I could go on and on about the whys of how I ended up starting a company. I think the main reason is just realizing that I'm not going to be around forever, and I want to spend my life doing what I love, and finding the opportunity, and being patient to find the opportunity to do something that I'm both passionate about and something that is sustainable as a business. So working at JP Morgan was great, and I learned a lot, and I had a very comfortable, great job there. It was just down the street. I would work out at the Yale Club in the morning, and I'd go to the steamer. It was great. Very comfortable, but it wasn't as purposeful as what I do every day today. So I was very thankful to make the transition for that reason. That said, you move from a giant bureaucratic organization where you're not worried about it being open the next day. If Bernie gets elected, maybe, but we were never worried about, profitability overall of the bank. We were more worried about our own careers and our own authority and our bonuses, but never about keeping the doors open. So it's definitely a trade-off of security for doing what you're passionate about. I'd say that's why I made to talk a little bit more about the organization. Obviously that's a huge difference going from 165,000 person company, global brand, one of the top 5 banks, did pretty well through the crisis, to an organization today that is a startup. And, we have 3 full-time people. I'll give a shout out to Siobhan, who's right over there. Siobhan, you want to stand up now? Okay. I promise I wouldn't embarrass her. We are 66 2/3% Wahoos at Sugarlift. But the organization is much bigger than that. We have 3 people full-time. We have an intern. We're actually looking for another intern for marketing and social media, if you know anybody. We work with a lot of freelance people, so graphic designers, web designers, legal, curators. You kind of go down the line. I think about our organization more as like 15 to 20 people that we interact with all the time, and that doesn't even count the 100+ artists that we are serving and connecting with collectors. So it's kind of a phantom, really big organization. In terms of my role, so I started the company with actually a guy I worked with at JP Morgan. So my role as president and co-founder at the highest level is basically I'm responsible for making sure we have the right people and partners, especially when there are 3 of us. People define the culture and they're going to dictate the people that join after that. So we're very focused on that. We love having Siobhan on board. We love having UVA people. The more UVA people, the merrier. The second thing is folks, coming up with a vision of the company. So figuring out what it is, what's the problem we need to solve, and making sure that we have the right strategy to take on that vision. Again, it's simplifying, finding great artwork for your apartments. And then third, that was my other advertisement. The third thing is just focusing on execution. So once you come up with a vision, you can have all the great ideas in the world, but if you don't actually roll up your sleeves and kind of drive it home, it doesn't matter as much. So make sure we get the right plan. We got 2 whiteboards in headquarters, very organized, make sure that we realize that dream.
Thank you. If you could, we've got time for probably 2 more questions, then I want to open it up to the audience. But if you could magically transport yourself back in time to your days on the lawn at the University of Virginia, what would you do differently? Would you study different things? Or would you just do what you did? Based on where you are now.
So I grew up in Florida where there's not a lot of culture. And
There's so many museums in Florida, so I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that one.
it must have
Maybe
happened
not when he was
not
growing
during
up.
my watch. We got a lot of golf courses. But I got to UVA and I didn't really see the need to study art history. I loved studio art, so I spent a lot of time with like Crozier and Dean Das, Kennedy, permanent departments. I took one art history class that I needed for the studio major. It was with Howard Singerman, art history since 1945. And I took it at like 1:30 after lunch, and it was in like the downstairs room, and he would dim the lights, and he had this very soft voice. So I would just be trying to stay awake the whole time, and every class would wake up right at the end. But I really, since graduating, I've kind of got my own art history degree, just going to museums and seeing work in person and traveling to go to museums. The art history program is so great at UVA that if I had gone back, I would take more art history classes. And I would take Singerman in the morning, which I think translates to about 11 o'clock in the morning at that point.
Yeah, he's up here, Tish.
I think along the lines of what I would do differently, I wish I had taken a contemporary art class. I was so enamored with old masters that that seems to be what filled up most of my time, and I was double majoring in English and art history. So getting through art history reading and Victorian novel and Beowulf and all of that was rather challenging. But I think one of the things for me that was so fantastic was how supportive Larry Getty, the head of the department at the time, was in my studying abroad. So I took my British art class in the Tate Britain. I took my Shakespeare class, and we would read the book, and we'd go to the Globe and see it. And the fact that the university supported me being able to fulfill my credits needed for a double major while studying abroad, I was so excited about that, and the sort of small percentage of students that go abroad, that I came back and worked in the study abroad office, and I think at the time it was less than 5% of the student body that went abroad, and understandably given it's a state school and the cost of being abroad, but for me that was truly transformative. I would not be here today had I not had that experience. It's how I got my job in the London office in Old Masters, and I'm just so grateful to the support from the art history department to be able to fulfill that. But I do wish I would have taken an American art class and a contemporary art class, though I have to say I'm constantly learning and growing and challenged, and one of the things I really love about my current role is that I get to work with all different collecting categories. So not only am I learning American art and contemporary art, but also African art and going to these artist studios. And I remember working my first role, actually Calvin, when I moved from Old Masters to Museum Services, I called Calvin and I said, I want you to take my old job in this department. And the head of the department at the time said, well, you just want her to have this job because she went to UVA. And I was like, well, yes, that's true, but I promise when you meet her, you'll see that she's the most qualified candidate. And frankly, she might actually make me look bad because she's so accomplished and amazing. And she has continued to grow and thrive in that department since then. But back to my first day in this job, it was my birthday, and it was raining, and I had to be at the Neuberger Berman offices at 5:30 in the morning because Lehman had fallen and they needed to sell part of their art collection, and we were only allowed to be there before hours and after hours. So I was there at 5:30 in the morning, de-installing, bringing things to sale from the bankruptcy of Lehman. And I remember them handing me a certificate for the Solowit wall drawing while painting over the wall, and I, horrified, was like, what are you doing? Like, somebody needs to take that wall out, and that's what we need to bring to Sotheby's. And clearly I've learned more since then and understand the nuances of it, but there was another piece where they handed me a Tupperware pencil shavings, and I thought, and they were like, oh, this goes with this piece, and I then made the shippers take every nail and screw and like everything that was around the work of art, because it was a little bit different than the Dutch Old Masters that I've been working with for the last 5 years. So have learned a ton since then, and I think that, again, it's Virginia and studying abroad and the support from the art history department that got me to where I am today, and the network of Sotheby's and Virginia alums, but also I think in the larger overall art world, has been incredibly supportive and exciting, and I think there are great things happening at the Fralin, and really, it's an incredible department. So I don't, other than I wish I could have taken more classes, I don't think I would change anything.
Thank you. Reece?
I mean, I'm like racking my brain. Honestly, I have very few regrets from my time in Charlottesville, but I have to say, if I was to go back and kind of want to better prepare my younger self for now, I probably would have encouraged myself to be more involved. I was very active in art history. I was an ACL scholar, and basically I took that to mean that I didn't have to take anything except for art history and French, which were my majors. So that's like the only building I was in was Campbell Hall. And so Courtney and I kind of briefly mentioned that we started a class at UVA, which I think some of y'all, or I know some of y'all have taken, called the Art+Business. And that was our 3rd and 4th year. And that we involved a lot of local arts professionals, gallery owners, economists, collectors, local nonprofits. And in leading that, I realized how rich Charlottesville is. While it's a very small town, it's incredibly cultural. I mean, it has like more restaurants per capita than any other city except for New York in the country, which is a stat I love. I don't think that's true with galleries, but nonetheless, there's like so much to do, and I wish I had gotten more involved. I was a docent. Calvin actually taught me how to be a docent at the Fralin, or the Bailey, now the Fralin.
But it's on how many shout outs you get.
Yeah, Courtney was with me. But Jenny, actually, to keep like calling out people in the audience, Jenny Smith was the head of the Student Council Arts Committee, and that for me was like a really formational thing, and it encouraged people to get involved, and I was much more involved in my sorority than that, and so that's probably my regret, is that I just
super involved.
sustained dialogue, things like that. Just, I think it would have prepared me better for the real world.
Courtney?
Trying to think of all the things you guys have said that I was going to say. Other than live on the lawn, which would have been awesome. Yeah, I think that I definitely found my path of art history, and then later finding out about the docent program, or Final Fridays, First Fridays at the Downtown Mall. But maybe just to mix something up, I mean, maybe even like studying abroad for a whole year. Like studying abroad for a semester is like, how could you take a semester off of UVA? The most beautiful campus, and how can you miss football season? Yeah.
Our team's really good.
There was a girl the year above Reece and I who took a full year, and I always kind of admired her, but never did that, never was gutsy enough. I also missed playing a sport. I tried to pick up club tennis for a couple of semesters, and it was like 9 o'clock practice, and I didn't, you can't find a parking spot for your car, and I would think I was trying to recreate a memory from high school with a really good group of friends and an awesome coach who also went to UVA. I think getting to UVA, you you work so hard to get there, and you get there and you're like, oh my gosh, everyone was president of student council and created this, you know, solved cancer and all, you know, all of these things. And so you kind of pause, and it's, at least for me, I was so positively overwhelmed with the activities and student governance and all these clubs you can create or courses you can form if there isn't that course or class or whatever. So I don't have regrets about taking some time to really figure things out, but I do think that you have to do your research. And, you know, I didn't find out about the docent program until second semester, second year. So I wish I had more time at the Fralin, or maybe I don't have any regrets about club tennis, but it would have been fun to do, like, pick up, you know, a kickball league or something like that.
Thank you. Love to take some questions from the audience now. Anyone? Yes?
So in the work that all of you do, you work with a lot of very creative people, but you're, for the most part, Wright's probably the exception to this, your primary role and responsibilities center around the audience, the people who are consumers of the art that the creative people produce. Do you feel like you yourselves are creative people? Does that help you? Is it easy or difficult to speak the language and to translate between the two?
Honestly, for me, again, as I said, I tried very briefly to pick up studio art and realized I had nothing to say and very little talent, and so that was a dead dream. But I'm not that creative in the traditional painterly sense. I realized at Sotheby's in a job that I really did not like. The company was great, but my role in shipping and logistics was just not for me necessarily. It was very back of house. I was in their floater program, which sort of floats you around to different departments, which is really amazing. You get a very comprehensive idea of the organization. But I sort of floated and got lodged in the logistics department, and it was very back of house, very little interaction with clients at all. But while I thought when I left that I wanted to be away from that forever, I realized that in my current role at the Armory show, working so closely with our clients, for me the creativity almost comes from how to be creative with the operational production side of this organization, because we're not a startup, it's a 20-year-old art fair, but we have a full-time staff of 6 people. And again, this is a huge undertaking that we work all year on. And so the greatest joy in my work, in addition to meeting with these gallerists from all over the world and developing relationships with them, is having near full autonomy in creating the production of this event from the gallery perspective. It was incredibly scary my first year, but it's very cyclical, and I feel like now I've kind of mastered the creative side of it, so that's where my creativity shines in operational logistics.
I'd say that a background in studio art and making art is extremely helpful in my role today. So I spend probably 20% of my time looking for artists that we want to get behind and represent and introduce to a new audience. And having made art, I compare it to, it's almost like I've been walking in the vineyards and made the wine, and now I'm the sommelier and kind of talk about process and talk about the story behind art. And with our audience, entry level, people who they say, I don't really know anything about art, but I know what I like. That's our audience. People who, when they see something, they fall in love with it, but they've got to make sure that what they're buying is the right thing, right? And you go to some entry level fairs, and you might not what's a Z clay print? Can anyone tell me? Or what versus a lithograph versus a photograph versus an oil painting versus acrylic. These are fundamental things that I've talked with our clients a lot about. To me, it's the equivalent of looking at the ingredient list, and now we've gotten down to ice cream with 5 ingredients, but 10 years ago it had it had Z clay in it, right? It had the same stuff we're making prints out of. So kind of understanding, having a conversation with clients, knowing how the product's made, but also evaluating the technique of artists, whatever medium they're using, printmaking, painting, knowing how difficult it is, and can translate into how talented they are as artists, translates into how much we want to get our effort behind them to promote them.
I used to joke that I couldn't draw a straight line with a ruler, and therefore was not creative, but realize now that squiggly lines could bring some big prices. Thank you, Cy Plombley. But as far as what we're doing that's creative, I think there's all of us in our roles. There's access to the art, and I can't speak for the other panelists, but certainly for me, one of the things that I love when I was in Old Master Paintings, I was in administration, and I actually had less access to the art in a specialist department because I was busy working on contracts and shipping and various other logistics. And now I'm working directly alongside the specialists, either pitching for business or working on appraisals, going to these museum exhibitions. I mean, I walked through the Picasso show at MoMA alone. The only other person in there was the security guard. I don't know, again, how many of you have been to MoMA, but pretty sure that other than Courtney here, no one has walked through the galleries at MoMA alone. I think I have the best job in the entire world. I'm afraid someone's going to catch on and tell me you can't possibly have a job that just sends you to museums all the time. But for now, I'm going to keep going with it. And I think that I personally have been really inspired by artists and shows and various different paintings to actually explain to you what happened when we were in front of that Kaibot. A client of mine from Norfolk Southern in Norfolk, Virginia, coined it for me, explained it to me, and it's called aesthetic arrest. And I've had that moment a few times standing in front of something where you're just so overwhelmed and taken aback, and you do really have that totally visceral reaction. I think that's what art does, right? Whether or not you love it or you hate it, you're having a reaction, and that's the artist is engaging you in that way, and that's a successful work of art to me. Even if you hate it, that to me is successful, because that means that you're reacting to it in some sort of way. So I think being able to think about it like that is the creative side that I've had access to because of the fairs that I go to, because of the museums that I go to, and artist studios. And while I couldn't have a conversation with Vermeer, I can have a conversation with an artist that I have access to through a museum group, and being able to enjoy a Vermeer and also speak with a living artist, I think really means now I just have really expensive taste in furniture and art, and redecorating my apartment is giving my boyfriend a very large headache because we have a $5,000 minimum consignment value at Sotheby, so it's amazing when you look at something that costs that much and you couldn't possibly think about having that in your house. Not that I could afford that, but I don't know if the creative side has been a plus or a minus there with that side of it.
On Christy's note about an empty gallery, I always, when people ask, most glamorous part of my job or least glamorous part of my job, when we're hosting our walkthroughs of, major exhibition, traveling exhibition, one of us from our team has to go through and kind of sweep through the gallery. So security cards are there, the doors are on manual, and it's just you and the sculpture or the painting, and I have to, the least glamorous / best experience ever is just like being the trash collector. So I'm going around, I'm picking up ticket stubs or tissues and like trying to take all these selfies without getting caught. And it's like it's an aha moment. I don't get into the galleries enough, I would say, and that's always my New Year's resolution, or just, grab a coworker and get in and go, even if it's just for 30 minutes, because I think even though I have a very creative role, I have donors emailing, calling all the time, and you feel that responsibility to get back to them and to be prompt. But that's really incredible. And then as I'm planning their calendars, when I was working for the club, there's a variety of programming that we can tie back to UVA alums, whether it's having a professor come up or someone like Jody to talk about what's going on in Charlottesville, or having these panels for different industries, or our partnership in the soup kitchen, partnership in East Village with the soup kitchen. And now it's like, okay, do you want to visit the Judd Foundation or DHLC? Or do you want to go to this trustee's home or this, this other home? So I feel really spoiled.
You're saying the MoMA is better than studio?
two great things that we're lucky with. But I mean, really, just being in someone's home and hearing the collectors talk, that really can inform your decision. And it's just such inspiration to hear how they got started or what inspires them. I never kind of golden rule. I never pretend to know something that I don't because it'll become readily apparent. But I'm constantly inspired by the people that I work with, and then just people that are around me.
Great. Any other questions?
Can I actually pose a question to the group? Is that allowed?
Sure, of course.
Um,
Sure can.
I think there's this idea that working in the art world is very glamorous and that we all wear tiaras sitting at our desk or something along those lines. I'd love to know from everyone what your least glamorous art world, and I know we all have so many of them, but if you can pick just one, because I think that's sort of informative of who we are and what we do.
All right, I'll kick it off because mine's definitely the least glamorous of everybody's. So, working at JP Morgan, we used to have this expression, when you're working on a team, there's always the job that's the least amount of effort and the most amount of visibility to get the job done. You're like, that guy's just dancing in the, he's dancing in the end zone, right? The opposite of that is the job that is like the thankless job that takes a ton of work. You're there late at night, and no one gives you any credit at all. We used to call that scrubbing the toilet. So then I started Sugarlift, and we would have events, and we had bathrooms that needed to be cleaned. So as the co-founder and president, I realized that, I was like, well, maybe if I scrub the toilet, the rest of the team will look at that and get really inspired and think, well, if he's doing that, like, there's no job too low for me to do. Or they just think I'm weird, but the jury's still out. But that's the least glamorous by far.
I mean, for me, like Wright said, the toilet scrubber, I'm sure all of us.
We can't end on that note.
But I mean, whatever industry we're in, at whatever point in our careers we are, I think if you are going to craft a very successful, fulfilling career, you have to at some point scrub the toilets, literally in Wright's case or figuratively. And for me, 100% at Sotheby's, I don't mean to poo-poo it at all. It's a very, very important part of the business, the shipping and logistics. You're basically sending all this stuff that's going everywhere, millions and millions of dollars work. But you get yelled at a lot. It's a very high stress environment. And for me, getting yelled at, being in the basement of this building for a year and kind of not understanding what this world was and kind of being thrown into it, that was definitely the year that shaped me. And it was definitely not glamorous. And there were many late nights and many tears and a lot of screaming phone calls about why didn't this $10 million shipment of diamonds get to London yesterday? And I didn't know it was supposed to. That was a not glamorous moment of mine. And it's still, even at a pretty high point in my current company, the Armory show, Courtney knows very well, I log I feel 100-hour weeks for 2 months before the fair. It's a very thankless job. Jesse knows. So it doesn't really stop, but if you love what you do, those not glamorous moments are part of what drives your passion.
Totally. I guess I kind of revealed to you one of the least most glamorous parts of my job, which is also, I think, one of the most exciting, being the trash picker-upper. But I think just, juggling a lot all at once, and if you are doing an off-site event, you're the bag lady, you're bringing the catalogs as gifts and the wine, and you're taking the subway, and you're changing your shoes and putting on your lipstick, and you have a hairbrush too at the same time. And then when you get there, you're welcoming everyone, but you're introing the speaker, but you're asking questions when the audience doesn't know how to interact, which is thankfully not the case, especially when you're with a lot of community donors. But, and we're constantly sending thank yous, right? You're asking for an event, you're thanking them, and then you are thanking them again, and it's obviously a win-win, and all of our hosts, whether it's at a gallery or a studio or a collector's home, it's such a wonderful opportunity for both parties. But I am like the bartender and the party planner and the decorator, and all those roles all at once. So it definitely makes for a fast day and acting on your feet, which is good.
You pull it off in a glamorous way.
Yeah. I think quickly before I answer my own question, I just want to say I feel like Virginia really prepared all of us to be in these roles where we're all wearing many hats and we are client facing and we're comfortable in social and professional situations where we're engaging with our clients. I know I personally feel very strongly that a lot of that experience, learning, and confidence came from my time at the university, and so I'm really grateful for that. As far as the least glamorous part of my job, it's also one of the best parts, which is the travel, which I remember having to process expense reports for colleagues who were complaining and wanted to get upgraded, and I thought they were being so crazy because they got to fly to Brussels, they got to go to wherever and see all these incredible things. And now on the flip side of that, being on a plane all the time and trying to brush your hair when you haven't slept and you're on an overnight flight to London and you're with clients from 9 a.m. until 2 a.m. Literally the whole time, taking quick walks to get more coffee. It's not so glamorous, particularly when you get delayed and stuff and are trying to figure out how to get home while sitting on the airport floor in these nicely dressed clothes while presenting to these clients who probably have had someone come to their house and do their hair and do their makeup, and you're doing your own hair and your makeup on the subway. So I think the travel part and having been stuck in Utica, New York, sorry if anyone's from there, or my experience in Kerrville, Texas at the Inn of the Hills. You can ask me later if you want full details, but it was really terrifying, and I was afraid that I needed to go to the doctor after sleeping in that bed.
See, I don't think you guys answered the question. You answered it like the interview question of what are you bad at, and you all said I try too hard, and I actually answered it.
Well, everyone, a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to put in a great plug as well. If you haven't been on the UVA Arts website in a while, I encourage you to do so. There's a tremendous amount that's happening. We launched a new website this year. We have an online version of the Arts magazine. And if you haven't seen the new Arts magazine, I encourage you to pick one up as well. And thank you all for coming here and being a part of this. And thank you very much to our esteemed panelists. Thanks so much.
Thank you.